The dust-laden wind whipped across Rebecca Rogers' face as she stepped off the stagecoach onto the main street of Llano, Texas, clutching her valise with white-knuckled determination. It was May 1877, and the 24-year-old schoolteacher from Boston had traveled over 1,000 miles to take a position no one else wanted, in a town that, by all appearances, didn't seem to want her either. Miss Rogers. A weathered man with a gray flecked beard approached her. "Name's Gerald Tompkins. I'm on the town council. We weren't sure you'd actually come." Rebecca straightened her travel-worn dress. "I gave my word in my correspondence, Mr. Tompkins. I don't break my promises." "Well," Gerald said, eyeing her skeptically, "the schoolhouse ain't been used proper in nearly 2 years. Last 3 teachers we hired didn't last a month. One ran off with a cattle driver, one quit after the Hollister boys set fire to her lesson books, and one just disappeared in the night." Rebecca swallowed hard but kept her expression neutral. "I'm made of sterner stuff, I assure you." Gerald led her down the dusty main street, past the saloon where men loitered, watching her with unabashed curiosity. Rebecca felt their stares but kept her head high. She'd come too far to be intimidated now. "There's our sheriff's office." Gerald pointed to a modest building with a wooden star hanging above the door. "Sheriff Mason Irwin keeps the peace round here. Good man, tough but fair." As if summoned by the mention of his name, the door to the office swung open, and Rebecca found herself facing the tallest man she'd ever seen. Sheriff Mason Irwin stood at least 6 feet 4 inches, with broad shoulders that strained against his simple cotton shirt. His dark brown hair was slightly overgrown, and a neatly trimmed beard framed a face that seemed carved from the very granite of the Texas hills. But it was his eyes that caught Rebecca's attention, deep blue and watchful, taking her measure in an instant. "Sheriff," Gerald nodded. "This here's Miss Rogers, our new schoolteacher." The sheriff tipped his hat. "Madam, welcome to Llano." "Thank you, Sheriff," Rebecca replied, meeting his gaze directly. Something flickered in those blue eyes, surprise perhaps at her boldness, before he nodded once and turned to Gerald. "The Hollister brothers are causing trouble at Peterson's store again. I need to handle it." "Don't let us keep you," Gerald said. As the sheriff strode away, Rebecca couldn't help but notice the fluid grace with which he moved, despite his size. The gun at his hip seemed a natural extension of his body. "Where will I be staying?" she asked, tearing her eyes away from the sheriff's retreating figure. "Mrs. Wilkins runs a boarding house for respectable ladies. It's just down the way." The boarding house was a 2-story structure that had once been painted white, but now wore the dusty beige of everything else in Llano. Mrs. Wilkins, a plump woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, showed Rebecca to a small but clean room on the 2nd floor. "Bathrooms at the end of the hall. Breakfast at 6, dinner at 6. You miss it, you go hungry," Mrs. Wilkins explained. "No men allowed upstairs, no exceptions, even if they claim to be your brother." "I have no brothers, Mrs. Wilkins, and I assure you I'm not expecting gentlemen callers, Mrs." Wilkins' face softened slightly. "You seem like a nice girl, but I feel I should warn you this town can be hard on outsiders, especially those who try to change things. The children here are wild, their parents even more so." "I'm aware of the challenges, Mrs. Wilkins. I'm prepared to face them." Mrs. Wilkins sighed. "Well, I hope so. The schoolhouse is just beyond the church. School starts Monday, though I doubt many children will show up." After unpacking her meager belongings, Rebecca ventured back out into the town. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the street. She needed to see the schoolhouse before Monday, to prepare herself for what lay ahead. The building was in even worse shape than she had imagined. The white clapboard exterior was weathered and peeling, one window was boarded up, and the door hung askew on its hinges. Inside was no better dust covered everything, desks were overturned, and what appeared to be bullet holes perforated the back wall. Rebecca stood in the center of the room, fighting back tears of dismay. This was worse than the council had described in their letters. Much worse. "It's a mess, isn't it?" She whirled around to find Sheriff Irwin standing in the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the dying light. "Yes," she admitted, "but nothing that can't be fixed with hard work." "That's a mighty optimistic view, Miss Rogers." He stepped inside, his spurs making a soft, jingling sound against the wooden floor. Optimism is a requirement in my profession, Sheriff. He studied her face, those blue eyes seemingly able to peer straight into her soul. Why'd you come here, Miss Rogers, to a town like Llano? We're not exactly Boston. How did you know I'm from Boston? Small town, news travels fast. He picked up an overturned chair and set it upright. You didn't answer my question, Rebecca sighed. I came because I was needed. The children here deserve an education just as much as children anywhere else. Noble. His tone wasn't mocking, but there was a hint of skepticism. But nobility doesn't count for much when the Hollister boys are setting your desk on fire. Are they really so terrible? Frank and Eugene Hollister. They're the worst of the bunch, but not the only trouble you'll face. He began writing more furniture as he spoke. Their father owns the largest ranch outside town, thinks that gives his boys the right to terrorize everyone. And you allow this, his jaw tightened. I enforce the law, Miss Rogers, but I can't be everywhere, and some folks around here have their own ideas about how children should be raised. Rebecca watched as the sheriff continued to straighten the room, his large hands working with surprising gentleness. Well, I appreciate the warning, Sheriff Irwin, but I'm not easily frightened. He paused, a half-smile tugging at his lips. No, I don't imagine you are. Still, be careful. This town, it's got secrets, grudges, old wounds that haven't healed. Don't all places, not like Llano. He set the last chair in place. I'll have some of the men come by tomorrow to fix that window and door. Can't have you teaching in a place that can't even keep the weather out. Rebecca was touched by his unexpected kindness. Thank you, Sheriff. That's very generous. Just doing my job, Miss Rogers. He tipped his hat and turned to leave, then paused. Church services start at 10 on Sunday. Might be a good way to introduce yourself to the townsfolk. With that, he was gone, leaving Rebecca alone in the schoolhouse, wondering what exactly she had gotten herself into. Sunday morning dawned clear and hot. Rebecca dressed in her best dress, a simple blue cotton with modest lace at the collar, and made her way to the small white church at the edge of town. Inside, the congregation fell silent as she entered, all eyes turning to assess the newcomer. She smiled politely and took a seat in the back, feeling the weight of their stares. As the service progressed, she noted the divisions within the small church. The wealthier ranchers, including a red-faced man she assumed must be Mr. Hollister, sat near the front. Shopkeepers and townspeople occupied the middle, while several Mexican families and a few black individuals sat in the rear corners, segregated even in worship. After the service, Pastor Williams introduced Rebecca to the congregation. A few mothers approached her cautiously, some with children hiding behind their skirts. "This is my son Timothy," said a tired-looking woman named Martha Ellis. "He's 8 and smart as a whip, though he doesn't always apply himself." Rebecca knelt to the boy's level. "Hello, Timothy. I'm Miss Rogers. I look forward to seeing you in school tomorrow." The boy nodded shyly, then whispered something to his mother. "He wants to know if you'll be teaching mathematics," Martha explained. "Our last teacher didn't think it was important for farm children." "Mathematics is essential for everyone," Rebecca assured them, "as are reading, writing, science, and history." A derisive snort came from behind her. Rebecca turned to face a large man with a ruddy complexion and cold eyes. "Waste of time filling their heads with nonsense," the man said. "My boys need to learn how to work the land, not read poetry. Mr. Hollister, I presume." Rebecca kept her voice steady. "That's right. And those 2 fine young men there are my sons, Frank and Eugene." He pointed to 2 boys, one about 15, the other perhaps 17, both with the same cold eyes as their father. "They don't need schooling from some Eastern spinster." Before Rebecca could respond, a deep voice cut in. "That's enough, Hollister." Sheriff Irwin had materialized beside them, his presence immediately changing the atmosphere. He wasn't wearing his badge today, dressed instead in a clean white shirt and dark pants, but his authority was unmistakable. "Just stating facts, Sheriff," Hollister replied, his tone suddenly less aggressive. "No offense meant to the lady. Miss Rogers has been hired by the town council to educate our children. She deserves respect." The 2 men locked eyes in a silent battle of wills until Hollister finally looked away. "Come on, boys," he muttered to his sons. "Let's go." As they walked away, Rebecca noticed the elder Hollister boy Eugene giving her a look that sent a chill down her spine. "Thank you, Sheriff," she said quietly. "Mason," he corrected. "In church, I'm just Mason. Then I'm Rebecca." Something warm flickered in his eyes. "Rebecca." He said her name as if testing how it felt on his tongue. "I hope Hollister didn't scare you off." "It takes more than one belligerent man to intimidate me," Mason chuckled, a deep rumble that Rebecca found inexplicably comforting. "I'm beginning to believe that. Will you join me for dinner at the hotel restaurant? They serve a decent Sunday roast." Rebecca hesitated, aware of the curious glances from the remaining churchgoers. "I wouldn't want to cause gossip. In Llano, everything causes gossip." His smile was genuine. "Besides, it might help establish your position if you're seen with the sheriff. Show folks you've got law and order on your side." Put that way, it made practical sense. "Very well, Sheriff Mason, I accept." The hotel dining room was the finest establishment in Llano, though that wasn't saying much. Still, the tablecloths were clean, the silverware polished, and the roast beef tender. Rebecca found herself relaxing in Mason's company as he told her about the town's history. "Llano was founded just after Texas joined the Union," he explained. "Used to be mostly ranchers, but the railroad brought more trade. Now we've got a real mix: ranchers, merchants, miners hoping to strike it rich in the hills." "And how did you become sheriff?" Mason's expression grew more serious. "After the war, I fought for the Union. I drifted west. Ended up deputy in a town near Austin. When the previous sheriff here was killed in a bank robbery, the council offered me the job." "How long ago was that?" 3 years this August." He took a sip of coffee. "Your turn. What brings a Boston-educated woman all the way to Llano, Texas?" "The truth this time." Rebecca folded her napkin carefully. "My father was a professor at Harvard. He believed education was the great equalizer, that it could bridge divides of class, race, even gender. When he died last year, I found I couldn't stay in Boston. Too many memories." She paused. "I saw the advertisement for a teacher in a town where no one wanted to teach, and something about it called to me. Perhaps I'm trying to honor my father's legacy." Mason studied her face. "That's a heavy burden to carry alone. We all have our burdens, don't we, Sheriff?" She met his gaze steadily. Before he could respond, the dining room door burst open and a breathless young boy ran in. "Sheriff, there's trouble at the schoolhouse." Mason was on his feet instantly. "Stay here," he told Rebecca, but she was already standing. "It's my school," she said firmly. "I'm coming with you." They rushed to the schoolhouse, where smoke billowed from one broken window. A small crowd had gathered, watching as flames began to lick at the wooden walls. "Get the water brigade," Mason shouted to the onlookers. He ran toward the building, pulling off his coat. For the next hour, the people of Llano formed a bucket line from the town well to the schoolhouse. Rebecca worked alongside them, her Sunday dress ruined with soot and water, her hands blistered from passing heavy buckets. Finally, the fire was extinguished, leaving the schoolhouse damaged but not destroyed. Mason found Rebecca sitting on the steps, staring at the charred building. "It could have been worse," he said gently. "The structure's sound. We can repair it." "Who would do this?" she asked, her voice hollow. "I have my suspicions." His jaw was tight with anger. The Hollister boys were seen riding away just before the fire was spotted. Rebecca looked up at him, her face smudged with soot. "Will you arrest them?" "I need proof, but I'll get it." He offered her his hand. "Come on, you need rest." "School can't start tomorrow, not like this." "Yes, it can," Rebecca said, her determination returning. "We'll use the church. I won't let them win so easily." Mason's expression softened with admiration. "You're something else, Rebecca Rogers." The next morning, Rebecca stood on the church steps as children began to arrive. To her surprise, nearly 20 students of various ages appeared, some looking curious, others reluctant. She recognized Timothy Ellis, who gave her a shy wave. Noticeably absent were the Hollister boys. "Good morning," she greeted the assembled children. "I'm Miss Rogers. Due to unfortunate circumstances, we'll be using the church for our lessons until the schoolhouse is repaired." A girl of about 12 raised her hand. "Miss Rogers, my pa says you're bringing trouble to Llano and we shouldn't listen to you." Rebecca smiled calmly. "And what's your name?" "Sarah Johnson." Well, Sarah, your father is entitled to his opinion. But while you're in my classroom, I hope you'll form your own judgments based on what you experience, not what you're told to believe. The girl looked startled, then thoughtful. The morning progressed better than Rebecca had expected. The children were behind in their studies, but most showed genuine interest. Even Sarah Johnson was participating by lunchtime. As the children ate their packed lunches in the churchyard, Rebecca saw Mason approaching, his expression grim. The Hollister boys, she guessed. Found matches in Eugene's saddlebag that match those at the scene. They've denied it, of course, and their father's threatening to have the town council remove me if I press charges. Can he do that? He has influence. Money talks in Llano, just like anywhere else. Mason's eyes softened as he looked at her students playing nearby. You've got quite a turnout. Yes, it seems not everyone shares Mr. Hollister's opinion on education. Rebecca, Mason's voice lowered, I'm worried about you. Hollister doesn't take kindly to being defied, and now that I've confronted his sons, I'm not afraid, you should be, just a little. He placed a hand on her shoulder, the touch sending an unexpected warmth through her. Promise me you'll be careful. The intensity in his blue eyes made Rebecca's breath catch. I promise. That afternoon, as the children were being dismissed, Eugene and Frank Hollister rode up to the church on horseback. Eugene, the older boy, wore a sneer that didn't quite hide his nervousness. School's out for the day, Rebecca said firmly, positioning herself between the boys and her departing students. We ain't here for school, Eugene replied. Pa says to tell you that if Sheriff Irwin keeps making accusations, there'll be consequences. Is that a threat, Mr. Hollister? Just passing along a message, madam. His false politeness was more menacing than outright hostility. Well, here's my message back. I will teach any child who wants to learn. That includes you and your brother, should you decide education is worth your time. Frank, the younger boy, actually looked interested for a moment before his brother elbowed him. Come on, Frank. We got better things to do than listen to some stuck-up Yankee. As they rode away, Rebecca noticed Mason watching from across the street, his hand resting on his holstered gun. He nodded once to her, before turning to follow the Hollister boys at a distance. The next few days fell into a pattern. Rebecca taught in the church while repairs began on the schoolhouse. Her student numbers grew to 25 as word spread that the new teacher was both kind and knowledgeable. Mason often found excuses to stop by, ostensibly to check on security but lingering to watch her teach or help with repairs. On Thursday afternoon, as Rebecca was walking back to her boarding house, she heard rapid hoofbeats behind her. Turning, she saw Frank Hollister riding toward her, alone and looking troubled. He reined in his horse sharply. Miss Rogers, he said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. I need to talk to you. What is it, Frank? It wasn't me and Eugene who burned the school. It was Pa. He made us take the blame. The words tumbled out in a rush. And now he's planning something worse because you didn't leave town like he thought you would. Rebecca's blood ran cold. What's he planning? I don't know exactly, but he's real mad at the sheriff too. Says he needs to be taught a lesson. Frank looked genuinely frightened. I don't want nobody to get hurt. Pa gets mean when he drinks, and he's been drinking a lot lately. Why are you telling me this, Frank? The boy looked down. I want to come to school, learn things. But Pa says education is for weaklings. Rebecca's heart went out to the boy. It takes strength to stand up for what you believe in, Frank. That's not weakness. Frank, Eugene's angry voice rang out as he galloped toward them. What the hell are you doing? Frank paled. Nothing, Eugene. Just telling her to go back where she came from. Eugene grabbed his brother's reins. Pa's gonna skin you alive if he finds out you've been talking to her. He turned to Rebecca, his face twisted with hatred. You stay away from my brother, you hear? As they rode away, Rebecca hurried toward the sheriff's office, her skirts kicking up dust in her haste. Mason was at his desk, studying wanted posters. Rebecca, he stood quickly, alarmed by her flushed face. What's wrong? She relayed Frank's warning, watching as Mason's expression darkened. I've been expecting something like this, he admitted. Hollister's been too quiet. When men like him go quiet, they're planning. What should we do? Mason's use of we didn't escape her notice, nor did the protective way he moved to stand beside her. I'm going to post deputies at the school and your boarding house, and you shouldn't be alone. I can't live in fear, Mason. No, but you can be cautious. He hesitated, then added more softly, I don't know what I'd do if something happened to you, Rebecca. The admission hung in the air between them, charged with meaning. Rebecca felt her heart quicken. Mason eyed the door burst open and Gerald Tompkins rushed in. Sheriff, there's a mob forming at Hollister's ranch. Word is they're coming to run the teacher out of town. Mason's hand went to his gun. How many? 15, maybe 20 men. They've been drinking. Mason turned to Rebecca, his expression torn between duty and concern for her safety. Stay here, lock the door behind me. No, Rebecca insisted. This is about me, I'm coming with you. It's too dangerous. I didn't come all this way to hide when things get difficult. She held his gaze firmly. Besides, they might be less likely to start shooting with a woman present. Mason studied her face, then nodded reluctantly. Stay behind me at all times. They rode out to meet the mob, Mason on his bay gelding, Rebecca on a borrowed mare. Gerald had rounded up 5 deputies, all looking nervous but determined. As they crested the hill outside town, they saw the approaching riders, Hollister at the lead. Mason positioned his small group across the road. Let me do the talking, he told Rebecca, who nodded grimly. The mob halted a few yards away. Hollister swayed slightly in his saddle, his face flushed with drink and anger. Step aside, Sheriff, this ain't about you. You're armed and threatening a citizen of Llano, Mason replied calmly. That makes it very much about me. That woman is poisoning our children with her fancy Eastern ideas, Hollister spat, teaching them nonsense that won't help them survive out here. Reading and mathematics are hardly nonsense, Mr. Hollister, Rebecca said, urging her horse forward despite Mason's warning glance. No one asked you to speak, woman. Actually, I believe you just did by making me the subject of your grievance. Rebecca's clear voice carried across the distance. Mr. Hollister, your son Frank has a bright mind. He wants to learn. Why would you deny him that opportunity? You stay away from my boys. Your eldest son helped you burn down the schoolhouse, and now you're threatening violence rather than allowing your children to be educated. What kind of example are you setting? A murmur went through the gathered men. Mason seized the moment of uncertainty. Everyone here knows Miss Rogers has done nothing but good since she arrived. The school attendance has doubled. Children are learning. What exactly is your objection, Hollister? That someone might challenge your authority by teaching people to think for themselves. Hollister's face contorted with rage. He drew his gun, pointing it at Rebecca. I said step aside. In a flash, Mason was in front of her, his own gun aimed steadily at Hollister. Put it down, now. Time seemed to suspend as the two men faced off. Rebecca held her breath, acutely aware that one wrong move could trigger a bloodbath. Pa, don't. Frank's voice broke the tension as he pushed his horse between the two groups. This ain't right and you know it. Get back, boy, Hollister snarled. No, Pa, Miss Rogers is a good teacher. I want to learn, most of us do. Frank looked around at the other men. You all have children in her school, you've seen how excited they are to learn. Several men shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Hollister's glare. You going against your own father? Hollister's voice was dangerous. I'm standing up for what's right, Frank replied, his voice steadier than Rebecca had ever heard it. Like Miss Rogers taught us. Eugene suddenly urged his horse forward to join his brother. Frank's right, Pa, you're drunk and making a fool of yourself. The shock of his favored son's defiance seemed to penetrate Hollister's rage. He lowered his gun slightly, looking confused. Mason didn't waste the opportunity. Everyone go home, he commanded. Any man still armed and threatening violence in 5 minutes will spend the night in my jail. Slowly, the mob began to disperse, men turning their horses back toward their ranches. Only Hollister remained, his face a mask of thwarted fury. This isn't over, he warned, before wheeling his horse around and galloping away. Mason holstered his gun and turned to Rebecca, his face tight with concern. Are you all right? She nodded, her heart still racing. Thanks to you and to Frank and Eugene. She looked at the 2 boys who had remained behind. That was very brave. Frank managed a small smile. Does this mean we can come to school tomorrow? Of course, Rebecca assured him. Both of you. As they rode back to town, Mason kept close to Rebecca's side. That was too close, he said quietly. Hollister's pride is hurt. He might try something else. Perhaps, Rebecca agreed. But did you see how his own men turned away? They know he's wrong. Mason's gaze was tender. You've changed this town in just 1 week, Rebecca Rogers. I've never seen anything like it. I haven't done it alone. She met his eyes. What you said back there about me, thank you. I meant every word. He hesitated, then added, I care about you, Rebecca, more than I should, probably. The simple admission made her heart soar. I care about you too, Mason. For a moment they rode in silence, both absorbing the significance of what had just been said. Then Mason reached across the space between their horses and took her hand, his touch gentle but sure. I'll escort you to your boarding house, he said, and tomorrow I'll walk you to the church for school. And the day after that, Rebecca asked softly. Mason's smile was warm. And every day after, if you'll let me. The repairs to the schoolhouse were completed within 2 weeks, thanks to the voluntary labor of many townsmen, including, to everyone's surprise, Mr. Hollister himself. After a long conversation with Mason and a tearful reconciliation with his sons, the rancher had undergone a change of heart. While he remained gruff and opinionated, he publicly apologized to Rebecca and even donated lumber for new desks. As spring turned to summer, Rebecca's school flourished. Children from all backgrounds filled the classroom, learning together despite the societal divisions that still existed outside the schoolhouse walls. Mason became a regular visitor, often stopping by to help with lessons on law or local history. One warm evening in late June, Mason invited Rebecca for a ride along the river that ran near town. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the water, he helped her down from her horse and led her to a flat rock overlooking a gentle pool. I've been thinking, he began, suddenly nervous in a way Rebecca had never seen before. A dangerous pastime, she teased gently. He laughed, relaxing slightly. Rebecca, when you came to Llano, I was existing, not living, doing my job, keeping the peace, but not really part of the community. You changed that. You changed me. Rebecca's heart began to race as Mason took her hands in his. I love you, he said simply. I love your courage, your compassion, your determination to do what's right no matter the opposition. I want to spend my life with you if you'll have me. Tears of joy filled Rebecca's eyes. I love you too, Mason. You protected me when I was in danger, but you also respected my strength. You never tried to change me or hold me back. Mason reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold ring. Rebecca Rogers, will you marry me? Yes, she whispered. Yes, with all my heart. Their wedding, held in the newly renovated schoolhouse on a bright September day, was attended by nearly everyone in Llano. Frank Hollister served as Mason's best man, while Sarah Johnson, now Rebecca's star pupil, stood as her maid of honor. Mason continued as sheriff, while Rebecca's school became known throughout the county for its excellence. They moved into a small house near the schoolhouse, where Mason built bookshelves to hold Rebecca's growing collection of texts. In the spring of 1879, their son James was born, followed 2 years later by their daughter Elizabeth. Both children inherited their mother's love of learning and their father's sense of justice. On the 5th anniversary of Rebecca's arrival in Llano, the town council dedicated a new, larger schoolhouse, naming it Rogers Academy in her honor. At the dedication ceremony, with Mason and their children beside her, Rebecca reflected on how far they had all come. When I first arrived in Llano, I thought I was here to teach, she told the gathered townspeople. But you've taught me so much more about community, courage, and the power of change. This town wasn't what I expected, but it became exactly what I needed. That night, as they sat on the porch of their home, Mason pulled Rebecca close. Any regrets about staying in our dusty little town, Mrs. Irwin? Rebecca smiled up at her husband, thinking of all they had built together, their family, their home, their place in this community that had once been so hostile but now embraced them both. Not one, she answered truthfully. Llano is where I found my purpose, and where I found you. Mason's kiss was gentle, filled with the same tenderness and passion that had only grown stronger over the years. I thank God every day that you were stubborn enough to stay, Rebecca laughed, and I thank God you were brave enough to stand beside me. As the Texas stars appeared overhead, Rebecca rested her head on Mason's shoulder, content in the knowledge that she had found her true home not in a place, but in the heart of the man who had protected her when she needed it, respected her strength when others hadn't, and loved her completely through it all. In the distance, the schoolhouse stood as a testament to what they had accomplished together, its windows glowing with the promise of knowledge for generations to come. And in their embrace on the porch of the home they had built, Rebecca and Mason Irwin found the peace that comes from loving deeply, and being loved in return, a love that had transformed not only their lives but an entire town on the Texas frontier.